Great. Thanks so much, Michael, for taking the time to do this recording today. It's always great to catch up with you.
Definitely.
Before we get started, I always love to get a bit of an introduction into somebody's background, especially your background and Pivotus's background. And I could give it an introduction, but I don't think I give it justice like yourself. So it'd be great just to learn about the journey of Pivotus from when it started to present day.
Yeah, sure. So the origins of Pivotus is actually back in 1979. We started as a media sales company back then, and it meant that there was three or four staff in Brisbane, and we sold advertising on behalf of publishers like Fairfax and SBS and lots of different media owners out of Queensland, and dealt with the agencies up here. In about My wife started working there, and then eventually we bought out the business owner after some process. And then in about 2012, 2013, I worked out that there was a need for some programmatic services up here in Queensland. And many of the agencies had their global trading desk based out of Sydney, or their Australian trading desk based out of Sydney, but the independent agencies didn't. So I offered that service to them, and we grew that way through a brand called My Media Trading Desk. And that grew over time and up to where it is today, where we've got about 20 or so staff, all up and down the eastern seaboard and in India and the Philippines. And we've gone from just programmatic to all paid digital, all sorts of paid digital activity actually, and then offline media buying as well too. And we're plugged in with strategy and research tools and whatnot as well. So probably we call ourselves a digitally led full service media agency.
Great. So, which brings me on nicely. So, in terms of clients, and I'm not asking for names necessarily, but the types of clients that you work with, I mean, you position yourselves very much as a challenger brand and working with companies that want to do things differently. So, it'd be great
Yeah.
to expand a little bit further on that. And also talking about your structure as well, because it is, again, a little bit different from many other agencies in terms
Yeah.
of how you structure it. So, it'd be great just to learn more about that.
Sure. So two big topics there, and I suppose we do things differently here at Pivotus. That's in the nature of our sort of DNA. And first thing is client-wise, it's got to be challenger brands. Brands, they might be the leading brand in their field, but they want to improve their processes or systems or results or whatever it is. We're not really that maintain sort of an agency. It's a bit boring for us. So it could be that a lead brand, and we've got some leaders in their market for sure. And then we also have some that are three, four, five in their market, and they want to take some market share away. So everything from brands who are spending $5, $6, $7 million a year with us, through to brands who might be spending $200,000 a year for us. We're able to scale our services up and down to be able to suit those sort of people. And it all just fits within our company values, which are sort of absolute honesty, superior customer service, growth, and teamwork. And then we apply those regardless of the spend. You asked about team structure, and that's something we changed about 18 months, 2 years ago. And what we have is a pod structure. So some agencies have what I call a horizontal structure, where your client-facing staff and then your ad ops staff underneath, and they all sort of work together. What we work on is a pod structure, so I think of it more vertically, and we've got a few pods. And so within that pod, it's led by an account director who's client-facing, but that also in that pod, there's senior account managers, account executives, but then also PPC traders, social traders, programmatic traders in there as well that work only on those particular clients, and importantly, they report to the account director. So what we found there was it means the account director can manage the workload really, really well and protect everyone from overwork. But it can also mean that we can help manage priorities as they come up, rather than a trader might say, in the old model, trader might say, oh, well, I'm working on this over here for someone else. I'll get to yours when I get to it. This way, they only work on things for the account director, and they can work together on priorities and changing priorities and deadlines and all that sort of stuff. So it's worked well for the last couple of years, and yeah, we're sticking with it for the future.
Great. And you mentioned at the top of the conversation that you've got your team is all up and down the eastern seaboard, India, Philippines. You've got a unique working model from a remote perspective, which
Sure.
I'd love for you to touch on. But it'd also be great to talk about that culture, how you've created that culture, and I guess the DNA. You talked about values from a client perspective as well, but the DNA, what you look for in people that join Pivotus.
Yeah, good one. It's something we've had to focus on, particularly over the last sort of 3 or 4 years as we've grown. We were formed from people who had like four people who had worked together in an office, and then we disbanded and worked from home. This is back in late 2014, so before COVID and everyone else thinking that remote working was a good idea. We were doing it out of necessity. And then we sort of just grew with that same model. So we have, no office. We've got a couple of shared offices around the place for people to go to if that's what they enjoy. But realistically, we're all virtual and all online. So that cultural management, we have a really strong social events committee. So there's every 2 months, there's online events. We've got another one at the back end of this week. They're pretty fun and well documented. And then we have, we've got a company trip coming up to Boracay in April, May next year. And that's flying in 20 people from around the world to be able to get together for a week or so and do a bit of work, but mainly just relax and connect. And we've just had some get-togethers around the country as well too. So I do more of the travel, but I'm down in Melbourne and meeting with the team down there and going out to lunch with them. And then the Southeast Queensland team got together for dinner just a couple of weeks ago. So it's not like we're all completely absent from each other, but the team in India live about 1,000 kilometres from each other, so it's a little bit different for them. But the team in the Philippines got together just for a meal, and they brought their families along too, which was great. Only just a couple of weeks ago. So we are big on trying to keep that connection. We've got the company swag, company clothes, all those sort of things. Try to keep everyone on the same page. And I measure that via a staff survey every 2 years. Twice a year. And we've been doing that for about 4 years now. And how engaged people are, how aware they are of our future goals and intents. The values recognition is important as well too in there. And then one of the great things I really focus on there is the how supported people feel by their managers. As you know, in agencies, it can be a bit of staff getting thrown under the bus and someone just signing up a client or over-promising something and then just passing it to other people who've got to deliver it. Thankfully, we don't have that sort of attitude here. So our 100% result being staff are fully supported by their managers and can happily go to them if they're ever feeling overworked. That's one of the things I focus on there. So it leads to pretty good staff retention of many people here have been here 5 years, some 15 years. It's a little bit different, but it's something we focus pretty heavily on.
I think one of the things that we've looked at as well when we've deep dived into Pivotus versus other agencies, let's say, we're not going to mention names, but you've definitely got a very people have got great tenure at Pivotus. People stick around at Pivotus. Your retention rate is extremely high, which is something that's great. So I think, you're obviously doing something right if people are working pretty much fully remote, and seems like people love it, and that's a really big observation that we've always had when we've looked at when we've done analysis of
Yeah.
Pivotus versus the competition. So it's definitely something that we see works very well.
On that point, it's something, and you touched on the question before, I probably didn't answer it, but it's like what we look for when we're looking
Yeah.
for the work here. That's something we're refining over time, but one of the big things that proves to be successful is, and I think this is easier now after COVID because people have got a taste, or after, people have got a taste for remote working and they know whether it's for them or not. So the people that succeed at Pivotus are people who have a reason to be working remotely. It's whether they've got young kids or they're a semi-professional athlete or they've got pets that they're passionate about and need to be home for. Things like that that drive people to be at home rather than it being, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. I could work from home and not commute. People who don't have that burning need to work remotely, they end up sort of moving through us over after a year or so. So when I'm recruiting, the real need to work from remotely is something that's super important. And it doesn't even have to be from home. We have people who travel all over the world and work for us. We've got someone's just moved to France for 3 months and continued to work for 2 of those months they were working, and 1 of the months they were traveling. So it doesn't have to be kids and animals and sports. It can be they just love travel and don't want to be tied to a specific desk.
And how, I guess the next question is, from a training and development perspective, you are fully remote.
Yeah.
Um, what does the training and development look like for people, and how do you implement that?
Yeah. To be really upfront with you and in absolute honesty, it's not the easiest part of working remote. And it's one of the reasons, as a recruiter, you know, that we're not the best place for new grads or people who are new into the industry or whatever it might be. We don't have the sort of setup to really support them. I think they get benefits from just easily overhearing conversations or popping out for a coffee and listening to someone else at a meeting and getting that sort of that way of learning. Um, we're better off for people who've got at least 2, maybe 3 years worth of experience in the industry, and they've maybe gone through that, you know, heavy working, heavy drinking days of agency life, and realise there might be something else that needs to balance with their life, and that's why they come to us. They've got the skills, they can refine them with us, but they don't need that sort of daily hand holding. So we recruit really autonomous people, people who are decision makers, mature, responsible, those sort of things. So training development from a platform. I mean, we've got the typical things, the monthly training sessions and the lunch and learns and all those sort of things that every other agency has. We're just on video calls. We've got a great bunch of suppliers as well too that keep us up to date with things. And yeah, we've got a video library of different topics that we've spoken on over the years that new recruits can jump in and watch and get updated on. So it is something that's definitely important to us, and people do grow. I mean, growth is one of our values, but it's not the easiest place to work and probably not the appropriate place to work for people fresh into the industry.
And final question, in terms of the future
Mm.
and growth being
Mm.
one of your values, like what does the future look like for Pivotus over the next sort of 12 months or so?
Yeah, well, I'll be mad if it doesn't. If I said it didn't look fabulous. So it certainly does. One of the things I'm excited about is that we've got an exceptional baseline. We've been around for a long time, and what we've built out, well, because we're remote, the back end of our business is arguably even better than the front end of our business. So the back end of systems, processes, we've got a full-time quality assurance manager. No campaign goes live without her checking every single detail against our internal systems. Um, all of that, automated dashboards, really customized reporting, business intelligence tools, all those things, they're really strong in our business. So I believe we're just at this platform where we could easily double revenue and not blow out the systems and processes and staffing model we've got here. We'd have to recruit a couple of staff, but nothing too crazy. We've already got the operations director, the CEO, the QA manager, the data and analytics team, who can be those auxiliary people to help the account management and trading team. So yeah, I think we're really poised for growth, and that's something we're focusing on for the next period, because yeah, we've built out the back end, and just looking for more clients to serve, and more staff to be able to rescue from terrible places to work in our industry.
Well, I think Pivotus is clear that from my perspective that it is a fantastic place to be. We've been fortunate enough to help you on that journey as well, and so many candidates there that have loved that transition into the Pivotus way of doing things, which, as you said, is so unique. So look, Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to do this video. It's been great to get under the bonnet of Pivotus, and really appreciate you giving me all your precious time.
Good stuff. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Michael.